Magic in the air. I believe in a bigger and brighter future. I believe that love can guide us there. Believe I'm not falling. A miracle is only my way. Rainbows are possible if we make it through the rain. A kaleidoscope to navigate our way. I believe nothing changes if nothing changes. I believe there's more than we can see. I believe there's still so much we don't understand. I believe in you and me.
Estonko Hesche, greetings and welcome. My name is Roger Coon. Some folks call me Dr. Roger Coon, but all my friends, which I hope you will consider yourself, call me Raj. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And welcome to the 13th Annual Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit Powwow. We are so excited to be able to offer you these events, these hybrid events, these virtual events that we're doing, as well as our big main event for the powwow on Saturday. I am a board member of BAAITS. I have been a board member for, my goodness, I think 12 years, and I've been part of the powwow committee for the past 12 years. This year I stepped back a little bit, even though I'm doing some events. And we're excited that virtual allows us all to be together in this particular way. For example, I am up in a very remote little town called Guerneville, California. I am in Pomo territory. It's about an hour and a half north of the San Francisco Bay Area. And for those of us that are joining us live, watching it on YouTube right now, please travel over to the chat field and drop in the tribal territory that you are in. And if you are on land in which you do not know whose tribal territory you are on, please visit native-land.ca and you can learn more about the tribal territory that you are currently occupying. I want to share really quickly before we get into tonight's conversation some announcements about the powwow. We have so many amazing events coming up this week, including tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Pacific time. There is a snag night event. Ooh, so if you're single or if you're partnered and you still mingle, do your thing. No judgment here. But if you're looking for a little powwow boo, a little, post snag afterwards, you might find someone out tomorrow night. And then on Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. at Baker Beach in San Francisco, United Resilience, Muffy and Philippa will be offering a water ceremony, which I highly recommend you come check that out. Later on that evening, on Thursday, there is a State of the Two-Spirit world with many of the leaders from across Turtle Island from different Two-Spirit organizations. That's at 6 p.m. On Friday is the Brush Arbor Girls Drag Show. That's happening at 2 p.m. Also on Friday at 6 p.m. we have our potluck and hand drum contest. Then on Saturday is the big powwow. And then on Sunday, there is a rock concert, the Two Spirit Rocks Brunch, that is going to be down in the Castro at the GLBT Historical Society Museum. Myself and another of our panelists, Marx, will be performers on Sunday, and we are very much looking forward to being there. All of the information that you will need for the powwow this week is on our website, www.BAAITS.org. And then just search for programs and everything is listed there. I want to give a quick shout out and a thank you to the founders of BAITS. BAITS is celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And I want to thank all the volunteers that have been a part of BAITS over the years, in particular, those of us that have served as board members, including one of our panelists here tonight. In addition to myself, another of our panelists here, Nazbah, was a board member for many years, including I want to give a shout out to our current board. The BAITS Powwow Committee has included virtual panels since 2021, and I have been fortunate to host the panels over the years, and I'm excited for tonight's as well. In a moment, I will introduce you to some brilliant, prolific, and gifted writers who are also part of our Two-Spirit and IndigeQueer family. The writers we will meet tonight span a variety of genres, from nonfiction to songwriting, poetry, screenwriting, and academic work. Tonight, coincidentally, is also a personal celebration of my book, Somacultural Liberation, which was just released today in print, electronic, and audio formats. Thank you. And I will look forward to sharing a reading with you all tonight as well. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed panel of Two-Spirit IndigeQueer writers. And I'm going to start by passing the mic over to my friend, Jennifer Lisa, who I met at a Two-Spirit gathering in Montana a few summers ago. And I have just been in absolute awe and wonder of their talent ever since. They are a brilliant writer, a brilliant thinker, academic, healer, and an amazing friend. Jennifer Lisa, please introduce yourself.
Oh, Shana Roger, you started out with too much. Chiantamo, greetings, everybody. Thank you for having me, Roger. And I am Miccosukee, Florida Seminole, born and raised in Chicago. And I write a variety of things. I write poetry. I also write in the healing arts. And my philosophy book is coming out this month, but not out yet. This is just the cover. Sovereign Wisdom. It's a Native American philosophy book. So I write a bunch of different things, and I'm a teacher and a healer and a writer.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you are here. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing more from you in just a moment. I'm going to pass the mic over now to a friend and former board member of the Bay Area American Indian Two Spirits, Nazbah Tom, who is a really great poet. And I always think of you as an activist almost first before anything else, an activist, writer, and just all around badass. Nazbah Tom, please introduce yourself.
You're so sweet, Roger. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Nazbah Tom. I am Dene from my homelands in the Denetra area, which is, the four corners of the US. Yeah, I write, like Roger was saying, poetry. A lot of the poetry that I wrote in Oakland was really, a few pieces were really around just like all the activism that was happening there, and was able to share it in places, cafes, storefronts, and all those sorts of places to lift up voices there. So that was really great. And then more recently, I've been doing short stories. Got a story published in Love After the End that was edited by Joshua Whitehead. And then now I'm actually working on writing my first novel. And I was just at a writing residency, and we were practicing how to give the elevator pitch for what we're writing. And if you can imagine, these three things had a baby. So Brokeback Mountain, Res Dogs, and Love and Basketball. If they had a baby, that would be kind of what I'm trying to write. And still trying to put in some like poetic poems and prose in there, in addition to just really practicing the craft of novel writing, which is a huge challenge. So, but I'm excited about that. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Roger. Yeah, and everyone, also just great to see all your faces. Haven't seen Marcus's face in a long time, and Jennifer, Lisa, and just good to meet other folks too, Adam. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Nazbah, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we'll learn a little bit more about your time at Banff in a moment. I've also had a time to spend at Banff doing some music project many years ago. It's just absolutely amazing up there. And they have such a beautiful, rich Indigenous arts program. So folks, you should check out Banff. Maybe, I don't know their web address, but really, really wonderful Indigenous organization. And I'm going to turn it over now to my pal Marx, who, when I was putting this together tonight, I thought I want to have a songwriter that's part of the panel. We oftentimes forget that songwriting is writing. It's a kind of writing. And I am a songwriter myself. And I wanted to have another songwriter, two-spirit songwriter whom I admired. And also really enjoyed, genuinely, authentically enjoyed their music as well. So Mark's truly honored that you are here tonight, and welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, Wewina. Thank you, Roger, and all. It's very great to be here. I'm coming at you from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the land of Muskogee Creek and Cherokee and Osage, and I am Marka Cassity as a therapist and licensed marriage family therapist, trauma therapist, and also a writer. Marx Cassity, bringing in a gender marker X into my name in honor of gender diversity, which has existed all through history, all our queer and trans folks all through history, that gender diversity. So in honor of that, with the writing and song and music video over the past year with the Indian Collective Radical Imagination Grant. So yeah, I'm happy to be here talking about songwriting tonight. And what else can I say? I'm Osage, I'm Ka, I'm also a mixture of European heritage and a descendant of, I'm enrolled Osage. I grew up in the Osage Nation of Oklahoma, here in Oklahoma. And I'm also a descendant of the Susquehannock and Saponi people on my father's side. And proud of all that heritage, and just really happy to be here and head out to the Bay really soon. See y'all at the Powwow. Yeah.
We'll see you at the Powwow, and we'll see you on Sunday at
That's right.
Rock, because you're gonna rock out for us a little bit. So
yeah, gonna bring some songs from To Us Sacred, this recent album. Yay. That's all two-spirit themed. So come on out.
And we're gonna watch your video in a little bit. Your from the recent album. So thank you so much, Marx.
Thank you
for being here tonight. And now I want to introduce you to my friend Adam. And Originally on the panel tonight was another friend, Josh Whitehead, who unfortunately was unable to join us today. And I had a brief moment of panic of like, oh no, what am I going to do? And then I thought, let me just reach out to Adam, because Adam is like the type of friend that always feels, you ever have those friends that are just like calm, like always just chill. Adam to me is one of those friends who I was like, I bet if I reach out, even in my panic state, Adam will receive this message and either say yes and or no. And thankfully they said yes, and I am honored that they are here to be able to share their talent, which is another side of writing that oftentimes we don't think about too much, which is screenwriting, film writing. And I know last time I saw you in Los Angeles, Adam, was during the writing strike. That's the last I was down in LA doing a gig, and that's the last time I saw you. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, friend, for being here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Roger. If you think of me as a calm person, I'm glad I fooled you into thinking that I am calm and chill. But I am more than happy to step into Joshua Whitehead's heels tonight, walk around a little bit. Epeva Shiv, Adam Nehesheva. I'm Adam. I'm a queer two-spirit Tsitsitas, Northern Cheyenne white writer in Los Angeles. I grew up in Montana. I write film and TV and novels as W.A.W. Parker. My novel, The Wasteland, won a couple Queer Indie Book of the Year awards. But the best, most personal thing I've ever written is this short film called The Roof, which was recently released on Disney Plus, starring Phoenix Wilson and Wes Studi. So thank you so much for having me.
I'm so proud of you for that. We're going to watch a trailer of that clip tonight. And if you don't have Disney Plus, I think it's called, is it the Launchpad series is what they should look for? If they go on Disney Plus, look for Launchpad. And that film is called The Roof, is how you would find that. Well, now I'm going to introduce myself to you all a little bit more and just offer the first reading of the night. As I mentioned, my name is Roger Coon. I come from the Porch Creek people. I was born and raised in North Dakota, primarily amongst my German-Russian settler family, though my mother always kept me very connected to my native identity, I travel back to my homelands quite often, as my mother has returned back to the homelands now. So recently, I've been writing a lot because I was in graduate school and then I went and got a PhD. And if you've ever studied in that capacity, I always say to folks, having a PhD does not necessarily make me smarter than anyone. It just means that I know how to get my homework done in a timely manner, which usually meant that I had to write a lot. It was like regurgitating, just writing and writing and writing and writing. And when I was doing my dissertation, all the things were true. All like the cliches happened to me in that final month. I got an ulcer. I cried pretty much every single day. I would weep for what felt like hours in the shower, and it just tormented me. And I never, to be honest with all of you, never really considered myself a writer outside of the genre of songwriting. And here I was writing a dissertation. And then shortly after that, I've now written a book. And as I mentioned today, as I mentioned earlier, the book came out literally today. Just coincidentally, it came out today, and the day that we're doing this panel discussion. So I wanted to share with all of you that are watching and those that will watch this recorded video, my first reading of a bit of my book called Somacultural Liberation. This is a nonfiction book. It is technically in the genre of psychology, self-help, LGBT studies, and Indigenous studies. I talk a lot in the book about my own experience growing up in a biracial, bicultural household, and also about what it means for me to be and to identify as a two-spirit person. And there are exercises throughout the book to help people get more in touch with their own culture. So, liberation. Every liberation movement in the past, in the present, and in the future is about the body. Liberation movements, whether they are attached to anti-racism, women's rights, two-spirit LGBTQIA plus rights, or religious freedoms, exist because bodies have been oppressed. Throughout human history, stories of humans oppressing other humans' bodies have existed. These stories exist across the globe and are not limited to any specific region or country. Examples include the genocide of the indigenous people and the enslavement of African people in the Americas, the Holocaust in Europe, the caste system in India, and the colonization of Australia and Asia. Although these examples may differ in regard to what has and continues to happen, they all share one thing in common: the human body. Oppression requires coercion of the body. Thus, liberation requires freeing the body. My belief of somacultural liberation requires acknowledging that all bodies are not treated equally. Although written history has always favored the story of the oppressors, liberation will always favor the oppressed. This begs the question of whether the oppressor can ever find or feel liberation. I believe the answer can only be yes, if the oppressor is willing to acknowledge the pain and harm they have caused others, and is willing to recognize and rectify the benefits they have received, either directly or intergenerationally, by their acts of oppression. In my birth country, the United States, there are constant reminders of the genocide of the indigenous people and the colonial rule indigenous people continue to live under. Some of these reminders are embodied by the American military complex and the reservation system. Although indigenous people have served in the US military forces for over 200 years, they did not gain US citizenship until 1924 with the passage of the Indian Citizen Act, signed by President Calvin Coolidge. Indigenous people, and in particular Diné, Navajo people, have been rightfully credited with helping the United States military complex win World War II. Still, many indigenous people feel serving in the US military perpetuates ongoing colonial abuse, both in the US and abroad. One of the greatest ironies of the US origin story is that of religious liberation. We have been sold an origin story that the United States was founded on the value of religious freedom. Yet, indigenous people did not gain religious freedom until 1978 with the passing of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Do you catch the irony of a country being founded on religious freedom, doctrine of discovery, and manifest destiny, while using religion to commit genocide against the original inhabitants of the land? Religious freedom in the United States has long been a tool used to oppress minorities, including to enslave African people and deny the rights to two-spirit LGBTQIA plus people. It is dangerous to talk about liberation. Many of our cherished icons know that all too well. In any of our cultural backgrounds, we have leaders who have been the targets of violence because they attempted to help free their families, loved ones, and community members from ongoing assaults on autonomy, sovereignty, and freedom. No doubt you have also experienced violence, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, lateral, spiritual, and so on, that has led you to seek your own liberation. Maori activist Leela Watson is credited as having said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound with mine, then let us work together." I am writing this book and sharing parts of my journey along the way because I believe what Leela Watson said. I believe that if I am to be truly free, I must work with others on this collective path of healing and liberation so that we can all get closer to freedom. Somacultural liberation does not exist in a solitary field. It is a multi-directional process of sharing and experiencing pleasure, and pleasure heals. Somacultural liberation is one path to returning to ourselves. Ooh, just one path, just one path. It's just one path. As I mentioned, the book is available on paperback. It is available on as an ebook or as an audiobook, and is available to order wherever you might purchase your books or your ebooks or your audiobooks, etc. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn this over now to folks that are here. And I have offered all of our writers tonight an opportunity to share some of their work, just as I have. And so I know we're going to see a couple of videos from both Adam and from Marx, though Jennifer, Lisa, and Nazbah. If either of you are also interested in sharing, if maybe Jennifer, Lisa, if you want to kick us off, and then we'll go to Nazbah. We'll swing it over to Adam, and then we'll go to Marx from there. And then we're going to come back after they've had their moments of sharing. We'll have some general questions. For those of us that are watching us live right now, if you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat field, and our moderator is going to be getting those questions to me so that I can interject and interweave your questions throughout our conversation this evening. So please, Dr. Jennifer Lisa Vest.
First of all, Roger, that was amazing. I'm excited about reading your book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to just share a poem. It's called Names. We call ourselves the Seminole people, Miccosukee Creek, Ocklawaha Trail. But we've gone by other names we won't translate, names we can't repeat. Names that are nobody's business but our own, and other names they didn't want us to keep. We come from many places, but we were always here. Before the Spanish came, we were Ikaniuksagi, the original Peninsulares. Kunti bread eaters, Calusa, Tumukua, Ayes, Tequesta, Apalachi, Alachua. We were sailors, farmers, fishers. Our queens protected us. Our priests danced for us. Augustine was not our saint. They called us fierce and powerful peoples, death-obsessed serpent worshippers, giants, and smooth-faced pirates before half of us left for Cuba, Bahamas, Nicaragua, and the rest of us who survived Spanish, Christian kindness, baptism at the point of a sword, escaped up north. Before the French came, we were Natchez, Biloxi, Alabama, Chichamacha, Toltec. We venerated the women, the dead, and the sun with song, smoke, and shell-laden pyramids. We spoke many languages. We knew all our neighbors. They called us mound builders, sun worshippers, formidable foes. When they grew envious and impatient, before the messengers could gather 5 nations of warriors, they killed women and children, fought a war of extinction. Those of us who weren't sold to English plantations down south or to Haiti escaped to the east. Before the English came, we were Hichiti, Cherokee, Yuchi, Yamasee, Tunica, Oconee, many peoples coming together, creating and recreating ourselves, moving when necessary, united against a common foe. We became a nation of nations. We survived in our stories. We learned to love strangers. We traveled south. Before Jackson, before rabid, flesh-hunting Carolinians came, we were fluid and raceless. Igbo, Dahomey, Ga, Fon, Hausa, Yoruba, we were U and Dagon, farmers teaching hunters, clans expanding. We were Miccosukee, Tallahassee, Muskogee, allies and kinfolk before they called us mulatto, mestizo, musty, Negro, stolen property, Creek. Before they tried to separate us out one from another, we were families. Ufala, Esti Seminola, our neighbors called us, those who camp at a distance, remnants and renegade, trailblazers and healers, clever and careful. We fought war upon war. We called ourselves Katishe, Luchi, Hatki, red, black, and white, Estakadi, Estaluski, Kanyuka Estachati, people of the pointed land. Regardless of Oakley, we were Yati, human. We traveled in circles. But they could not defeat us, so they called us savages, could not baptize, so they called us heathens, could not find us, so they called us wiped out. could not understand us, so they called us mysterious, could not educate us, so they called us backwards, could not convince us to learn their language, so they called us hostile, shy, afraid. But they were like Pehekoshle to us, and we had Ayekche. We had medicine for that. We kept moving. We took in strangers. We moved south back to the point, to a place where soft, pink people could not survive. Many of their soldiers died. They took to passing laws and telling stories about us. And they made up names. When they couldn't identify our diversity anymore, they called us Florida Indians or Florida Creeks or else Seminoles, convinced it was an English corruption for Cimarron, Spanish for wild man, and not the name our cousins gave us. When they got tired of fighting us, we became a legend. They spent 100 years trying to find the last unconquered Indians, sent in the army, government, surveyors, sports, fishermen, anthropologists, missionaries, but we were untrackable and intractable when found. We cost the government an embarrassment of riches and dead white men. In their eyes, we were the last frontier, so they did what a man does who cannot fish. They drained the whole pond in search of us, brought in heavy machinery and sucked dry the glorious Everglades, turned the swamps to sand and rock and clay, rounded us up to ask our names. Some names are for lovers, others are for friends. Our names are for our people, and we never told them to white men. We said Sally, Tommy, Cypress, James. You didn't understand why we all had the same names. But before name giving or name calling, we were here. We say before you left Spain in search of your splintered self, we were here. Before you realized England was cramped and dirty, we were here. Before you left France for your piece of the pie, we were here. Before you tried to carve a nation out of our expatriation, before you defined your red-blooded American selves in terms of our absence, we were here. Some names sort, others deceive. These names tell stories historians refuse to believe. We call ourselves the Seminole people, Miccosukee Creek, Ocklawaha Trail. We call you Ochkoche, the smoke in our eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Every time I hear that, I'm just always left with just a profound sense, like I feel that poem somatically. It just registers so deeply in my body. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what a surprise. I wasn't sure if you were going to share that tonight. I thought about asking. I thought about, maybe saying like, hey, would you possibly do this? I wanted, you know what, you do your thing. It's your moment. So thank you so much. What a really beautiful surprise. And it's so special. I think anytime anyone can ever hear that poem, really one of the most profound, beautiful poems I've ever heard in my entire life. So thank you for sharing that again tonight. Thank you so much. Nazbah, we're going to turn it over to you to do some sharing if you would like, friend.
I'd love to. Yeah. And in the sort of spirit of activism, I wanted to revisit a poem I wrote when Occupy Oakland was happening back in the day, but also to really link it to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, really honoring Palestinians and just holding up our Indigenous relatives across the way. So this is called We Have Been Occupied. We have been occupied, papered, carded, listed, interned, torn, ripped, shorn, walked, blanketed. We have been occupied, internalized, assimilated, bordered, fenced, reserved, unrecognized, colonized, halved, quartered. We've been occupied, policed, stripped, searched, patted down, spotlighted, assassinated, imprisoned, sentenced, executed. We've been occupied. whitewashed, dyed, bleached, shaved, starved, sterilized, stolen, sold, discarded. We've been occupied, indebted, unforgiven, schemed, played, traded, exported, imported, outsourced, foreclosed. These are the names they gave us. These are the ways they took from us. These are the ways they tried. But we are like the waters on this land, slicing mountains in half. We have our own names. We did not lose everything. We survived them. We are more powerful than what hurt us. We will remember our ancestors. We will drum, we will sing, we will honor Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Seneca, Mississaugas, and Anishinaabe, Palestine. We will feed each other truth. We will look out for each other. We will come together. We will protect Mother Earth. We will speak for those who cannot. We will make way for elders. We will listen to our youth. We will remember. We are memory. We will indigenize. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And as Nazbah shared a moment ago, they have a short story in Love. Oh, remind me the name of that title. I'm blanking right now.
Sure, no problem. Love After the End. It's an anthology of Two-Spirit and IndigeQueer speculative fiction, edited by Joshua.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. We were
Now,
just in Vancouver with him last year, reading that at the Vancouver Writers Fest. It was really awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, what I did not mention prior to introing both you and Dr. Jennifer Lisa was that I used to teach a class at San Francisco State University. And I had a little bit of a lecture on both of you because I did a feature on Two-Spirit writers, and you two were part of my lesson plan for that. And I think if I would have continued teaching the course, I recently stepped away from teaching, I would have had both Adam and Marx's work as well featured, but I left, last semester. So next time, if I ever teach that class again. And now I'm going to turn it over to, I was thinking about how, what I shared, what Jennifer Lisa shared, what Nazbah shared. Oftentimes we read those things in like books or tablets. Sometimes we hear the audio of them. And then there are others of us who are writers, and I would throw myself in this category as well, who sometimes our stories become visual stories as well, and they're told in other senses. So they transport us in a different way than if we're reading a book or if we're reading a poetry or listening or something like that. So we have an opportunity to see a couple of clips that our friends are going to share with us. So we're going to start with Adam. I'm going to turn it over to you. If you want to give us a little bit of a setup about what it is that we're going to watch, and maybe your process about like how it all kind of came to be, and then we'll watch the trailer.
Sure. We'll be playing a mini trailer for a short film called The Roof, starring the Two-Spirit actor Phoenix Wilson and the legend Wes Studi. I wrote this film after my grandfather had a stroke. And I got the call saying, go home. You need to if you hop on a plane right now, you have a chance to maybe see him one last time, or you might be coming home for the funeral. And so I hopped on the plane. Luckily, even though it was a major stroke for a 93-year-old, he had a relatively remarkable recovery, and I was able to spend a few days with him. So I wrote the first draft of this while visiting with him for a few days, really in the mindset of, what do I want to say to him in this moment? And what are the things that I maybe wish he had said to me growing up? So it's an imagined interaction that I wish I had with my grandfather at a much earlier age. So without further ado, let's go ahead and play a clip for The Roof.
Why'd you send me here?
Just give him a chance.
This is why she sent you up here.
Your grandma
wore that jingle dress. The air was had the name in it. It means she was two-spirit.
Like me.
Mhm. So that's a quick little taste, and I would say if you haven't already been able to watch it on Disney Plus, feel free to reach out to me via my website wawparker.com or my Instagram wawparker, and because I want to make sure that any Two-Spirit Native IndigeQueer person has access to the film if they want to watch it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've had the pleasure of seeing the film many times already. And I think, did I see you in Napa? Is that where I went to see the film? It was shown at like a festival in Napa, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was so wonderful to have you and L. Frank, who was
That's
part of
right.
the
Al
movie.
Frank was there too.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah. And such a powerful film. And I'm gonna call them a couple of legends, Two-Spirit legends also appear in the film as well. So it's really, really special. So I'm going to ask you some more about just the process of getting your work on screen and all the things that kind of happen behind the scenes that we may not know about in just a moment. Though before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over now to my pal and rock and roll and therapy. Marx and I are also both therapists. Marx, I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about the process about bringing this particular song to that visual life. How long?
Yeah, thank you. What a journey. What a journey. I was working as a therapist in lockdown, living in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I saw a statistic in 2021 about suicide rates for our LGBTQ Native youth, our Two-Spirit youth, being the highest demographic, 33%. Attempted suicide in 2020 was not surprising, but also shocking at the same time. And I, as a therapist and as a community member, as somebody myself who had lived as a youth, a young person coming out in the 80s in the height of the AIDS crisis in the Bible Belt in Oklahoma, I really struggled and could relate. And right after that, I saw this amazing, Indian Collective has this grant called the Radical Imagination Grant. And in that, they state, I'll just read, it says, "We believe in the power, the creativity, the audacity, and the commitment of artists, culture bearers, and designers to create and imagine new paths, new futures, and new worlds." Futurity, yes? And I was so inspired by that, that reading about our youth, as well as having worked with our youth actively as a therapist and having been my own self in that I want, I read this and I was like, I wanted, if they'll join with me, I'll join with them. So I applied and they said yes. And then there's a blank slate, right? That blank slate that we all come to as artists, as writers. And I had no idea what was gonna unfold, but I came thinking of my own self as a youth and as well as the youth or anyone still suffering in silence, isolation, being queer and Native, wherever they are. I've worked a lot in the urban areas. I worked at Native American Health Center in San Francisco as an intern. I've worked in the rural areas. And so I just started toning and singing and also opening to receiving whatever came in that way. And so it started with also remembering myself having being, in that way of self-destructive and not knowing if I should be alive or not on the earth. I had been told by a lot of people at the time that I was an abomination when I was like 18, 19, 20, I was seeing a lot of that. And so I was quite, I was wondering if I wanted to be here or not, alive or not. And I could relate with that. And I had a really powerful experience with a lightning strike. The lightning came to me when I was out in a big storm in Oklahoma, kind of lost in my way, really in a dark place. And it knocked me down and it told me, "You're here for a reason. Stop killing yourself." And I was remembering that. And I just started remembering that, and also having come from the Osage Reservation and all those familiar old roads, like my grandmother's road, and, the familiarity, that what we call attachment, secure attachment, that's so important to us as youth, and to lose that, to have lost that, and that familiarity, my grandmother's road. And I was thinking of the deer. In Oklahoma, when we go home, we say, watch out for the deer, because they're on the roads out there, So kind of that innocence of the deer on the highway, and the innocence of Indigenous, of our queer people, our Indigenous youth, and then into the city, surviving in the city. So many people leave the reservation, or, are kind of ostracized or not accepted by their families. So they go to the cities to find one another. And I was, I can relate to that as well. Oklahoma City, I was at the first Pride Parade in 1989, which is like a few hundred of us and the Klan, like yelling at each other on the street. It was like not the prides of today. I'm really happy we have the pride of today. I see in Oklahoma, it's pretty amazing. But it was really life and death back then, is how it felt, and still is, So this song is about also coming into those communities. And so, just that process and receiving. And I say sometimes, there's a crafting process, but there's also receiving. Sometimes I get woken up like really early in the morning, and I receive, I think, from the ancestors, transcestors, guides, the muse, whatever you want to call it, it comes through. And sometimes I'll be like, why 4 a.m.? When I was on this project, I'd be like, why 4 o'clock in the morning? And it's like, well, that's when you're quiet, it's like, yeah. So, also I'll pay homage to Joy Harjo, who talks about these, this receiving, or the dimension, opening between into this place of not just crafting, crafting is important, but also being open and receiving from whatever you want to call it, other dimensions or other realms or other, ancestral realms. And so it all came together. And then as far as, first come the sounds and the lyrics, and then come the visioning for a music video was really powerful. The writing of a music video, it's like it's similar to screenwriting, I think, to visualize it and to talk with my partners and bring in community. It was very important for me to bring in community. I wanted to film this in Oklahoma, but we were still in a lot of COVID. So I came myself and individually brought in motion portraits of individual people in Oklahoma, as well as Adam. When Adam is in the video, I put a call out to community to send me their motion portraits as well. So you'll see these motion portraits around the country of Two-Spirit people and their expression. And then we have, I wanted to bring a dance element in that club in the 80s, where I survived, so I brought that in with Kamari Suraj as a dancer, an incredible whack Vogue dancer from Portland, as well as we had our protagonist, Silas Hoffer, Mr. Montana Two-Spirit 2020, came and played this main character that I visualized my younger self. And, Silas came and played the youngster struggling in religious trauma. And we filmed this in 2 days, and I just say it was guided. I mean, I don't know another way to say it. We had allies and people show up. The All Nations Portland Canoe family, incredible community, came together. My friend Claudia Cuentas, who's Peruvian, who came and played this part that you'll see, this beautiful community healing circle. And so I wrote it and I visualized it, but what came forth, I think, is just from all the prayers and support and lived experience and my heart and the medicine of Indian Collective and the Osage Nation Foundation, who also backed me, and all of us collectively. This is not mine. This is everybody's. So I'm very proud to share it with you.
reservation highway in the midnight hour. Flicker of the headlights, I'm losing my power. Storm clouds move across a full moonlight. Hate speech echoing eclipse my life. Watch out for the deer as you go home. Oh, it's fight, flight, fight, flight, freeze or fall. How much longer can I go on? My grandmother's road is all I've ever known. How long? How long? How long? How long? Ooh, how long? Ooh, how long? Ooh, how long? A thousand stars behind the neon lights, 1,000 heartbreaks beat, beat as I drive into the city at night, city at night, city at night. I miss my mother, I miss my home. Red earth heals in the thunderstorms. Heartbeat drum, heartbeat drum, heartbeat drum, heartbeat drum. In the club where the fire water flows, love is a battlefield over the rainbow, rainbow. Searing fall, laser lights on this dirty dance floor. I'm gonna dance, dance, save my life. One more night, save my life. One more night. How long? Ooh, 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 how long? Can anybody see this? Numbed by the genocide, blinded by the colonized, the thunder and the lightning, the thunder and the lightning, lightning, lightning is gonna light up, light up, light up. So rise up, child, you're here for a reason. For a reason. Rise up, child, you're here for a reason. For a reason.
Marx.
Woo!
That was amazing, amazing, amazing.
So Adam's stunning, looking stunning.
Yeah.
And every time Silas raises that fan, my mother gave me that fan for my 40th birthday, and it's such a symbol of how far in my family, in my community, we have come in acceptance and love and evolution. It's possible always. And it just gets me every time with beautiful Silas. Just, so thank you so much. That's an honor.
Well, if you check out the chat,
Yes, thank you, everyone.
folks have been shouting you out on the YouTube channel there. I know
Yes, Miko and Dr.
Lenny,
Jessica
Taylor.
Margarita, thank you, and Lenny, thank you so
Yeah.
much, everyone, for sharing it with students. When I hear that students are watching this, I get really excited to be inspired by the video and also make their own art. Like, everyone can do this, it takes work and perseverance and lived experience, but if we support one another, and places like these Indian Collective Granting and Osage Nation Foundation grants, so vital, to our artists. So yeah.
Well, let's talk for a moment. I'm going to bring everybody in here now. I want to talk about that process, right? All of us have done things where we've released albums, or we've released short films, we've released books, we've published, we've spoken, we've done these things, and it takes a process. When I'm songwriting, very similar, Marx, it just sort of comes. Sometimes I'm like granted by a gift from the muses or the ancestors. If I'm writing, like when I was writing for Somacultural Liberation, I had to sit down every single day. I was also on a deadline with my publisher, but I had to like force myself to get up and write. Although I realized that if I didn't have some kind of embodiment practice beforehand, my writing was not smooth, or didn't flow, because I wasn't connecting. So I would have to kind of get up in the morning. I write the best in the morning, get up and dance a little bit, shake things off a little bit, and then I would go into my writing process. So I'm just curious for all of you, if you even have a process of writing, are you disciplined? Are you just kind of a random freewheeler? I know, Nazbah, you were just in Banff, so that must have been somewhat disciplined because it was a set amount of time. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit. But would just love to hear from everybody a little bit about your process.
Yeah, I can jump in. Just, so for me, the Banff residency, it was 3 weeks. The first week was really just about settling us in, hearing from Wab Rice and Casey Plett read, and then also we started meeting with them for them to give us feedback about our work. That moved into the second week. And then we also read from our works that we're working on the second week. The cohort was split into two sections on Tuesday and Thursday. Community got to check that out. The visual arts and music and other folks who were at Banff came and supported us. It was a sweet community. I found myself writing pretty much in the morning as soon as I got up, because the characters were really like, right, and also I wanted to have something for, Wab and Casey to look at, but also, my peers to have something to look at, because the third week was really about peer review. So we'd, ask questions or read something and they'd give us feedback. And I also just sent pieces to a couple of the cohort members, and they just did a beautiful job of editing, giving ideas and suggestions. And then there was also just like around the lunch tables, breakfast tables, whatever you, or even in the sort of this little restaurant bar area called Max Bell, where we would just hang out and just talk about things, about our writing, as we got a lot of inspiration. But I found myself writing every day, usually in the morning and into like maybe early afternoon. And then I would kind of be spent with writing. So then I would just, kind of take part in any of the sort of programming that we were kind of co-creating together. So we had like fun at karaoke one night, we went bowling, we hiked up the little mountain behind, the spot, and just all the things, right, to really gel as a cohort. But what I was writing is actually the second draft. I wrote a whole other draft last year from about June to December. And I wrote it from third person, like, it had a very different feel to it. And when I gave it to my wife to review, she gave me some really good feedback. She was like, one, like, pick a perspective and stick with it. So I chose first person, which made
Your
it
wife
way
is
more
also a writer, though.
She is. Yeah. She's a novelist. And I mean, she's written
Yeah.
in all genres, but novels are, her most recent ones. Yeah, she's like, so write from first perspective, that might shift. Write from your body is what she was saying, right? So she was like, really don't write from up here, like write from the body. So, finding a way to get into the body. And then the other was really like, she mentioned when she was learning puppetry from a master puppeter, her teacher would say, don't move the puppet unless you're breathing with it, right? And so you don't just move it and like tell a story, but she was like, right? So it has a very different feel. And so she was like, don't move your characters until they're breathing, right? Until there's like an embodied whatever, And that really had me slow down. Like I'm still writing, right? And describing things, and there's dialogue and all that, but I'm really there with the characters. And it's two voices talking, so the two main characters. And so that really gave a very different feel for the second draft. And then I got great feedback from Wob and Casey, just about like, line edits, but also like developmental arc, and then even just like ideas for, what else to bring in. I have to rewrite a bunch of things just because they were just like too cumbersome or too whatever. So that was great feedback. And then I think the sweetest thing that I wrote when I was there, so in my culture, there is a belief that queer folks can call the rain. And so there's a scene where Si Hassan, one of the characters, is asked by their mom who adopted them, like, oh, can you go call the rain for us? Just this sweet little ritual they have. And I remember being asked that as a kid, wondering like, why am I doing this? Realizing later that actually my grandma believed that I could do that because she could see I was queer without me coming out to her. She could see that, and so I gave it to this character to do that. And I was talking with a couple of the writers there, and they were like, what if you actually wrote from the perspective of rain? Like, what would that be like? And so I spent a couple of like the weekend or something just writing from the perspective of when it first rained on Earth, like what that must have been like, right? To be born from volcanoes, like that vapor, right? And I really call it like the first migration, and what that was like for little baby rain to happen, and then how wise they've gotten over all the millennia. And then the second piece I wrote was like the first time they heard their name be called so that they could come in, and how they recognize someone like Si Hassan. And for that, I really had to get into a certain kind of writer somatics body to feel into like, how can I be 3.8 billion years old and also really know like these little people that call me, like what is that relationality and what did I teach them so that they could call me, right? So it's really fascinating to write that bit. And then I also want to just kind of sprinkle water throughout, both as like an omniscient character, like commenting. I want them to be playful, mischievous, but also kind of just like drip, like in the book. So just because it's always around, right? Like, so anyway, those are all the things that I really took away, and also just the writer community that got built while I was there. And then the final thing was just, it's really bizarre, and I wish everyone could have this experience to basically get up and everything around you is catered to you to do what you want to do. Like you have a bed, you have a desk, you go to the chow hall, and the people there are like, would you like soy milk with your coffee again this morning? Because they're watching you, right? And they want to make sure that you have everything you need so that you can just go and do what you want to do, right? And the programming staff is like, what else do you need to write? It was really bizarre to get used to. But once I did, I fell into a rhythm. And I just want everyone to actually have that experience of like, what is it like to be dropped into a space where you are spoiled and catered to, surrounded by all these creative people, and you just get to do what you want to do. That was really like, I've never experienced that. And it was a really profound experience. And I was like, I wish all the creators and artists in the world had places like this that you could just go to, that they were in all of our communities, and you had food and you had a place to stay, and other people to hang out with and just do this. Like I would like to go back to finish this book at some point. They do a self-directed residency. I want to see if I can get into that. Just because they say the mountain gives you things, right? There's mountains all around, and it gave me a lot. Yeah, I learned a lot about myself as a writer, gave me some other hard lessons also. But yeah, if you're able to get to Banff, like, please do.
Yeah, check out their programs. They have tons of programs for Indigenous artists, from writing to I was there for a music program years ago. They have fashion, they have filmmaking, they have traditional arts. It is one of the most profound Indigenous arts programs in the entire world. You mentioned a lot, Nazbah, about the power of community. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, Adam and I used to be part of a community writing group during COVID. I was writing on my dissertation. And I forgot about that as part of my process about, like, yeah, sometimes we just get together with other writers and stare at each other, and hopefully we'll think of something that we can start writing. So I wanted to know if others want to chime in here about any process that they might have for their writing process. Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer, Lisa.
Sure. I guess I'll start with that question about community. I actually use the Shut Up and Write platform to be in community with other writers.
What is that? Shut Up and Write? I've never heard of it.
It's just writers from around the world that get together on Zoom and write together.
Oh, okay.
They don't read each other's stuff. They don't have long discussions about it. You just check it and say, I'm working on this today. And then you write for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. And my favorite one is a 5-hour one. And you check out and talk about what progress you made. And I find that very helpful. I also, I find writing in the morning is the best. So I always write in the morning, but I too tend to write throughout the day. I meditate in the morning. I do yoga. But for me, I feel like the publishing process has had a big impact on my writing. Because it's so helpful to me to have somebody saying, you have to finish this by this deadline. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be writing all day today. And of course it's different from when you first start writing. So this book, when I was writing it originally, it was just me writing out longhand in a notebook, just in a wonderful inspired state. And then once you start working with the publisher, it's like the endless edits. And that's a whole different process of having to, force yourself, to sit at the desk for a certain amount of time each day and get it done. And so I have a schedule. I have a writing schedule where I write at a certain time in the morning, and then I write again later on in the day. And I kind of feel like writing is my main job right now, and then everything else I do, to make money or whatever, is just my side gig. And of course my writing isn't paying the bills, but it is my main thing. And I just spend most of my time kind of thinking about it. So like right now I'm just finishing my philosophy book, this one, Sovereign Wisdom. And the way I work, it's like while I'm working on a particular project, I can't work on another project. I have to stay totally focused on that project. And I'm so sick of this book because you know how it is to work on it for so long. And I'm just like, come on, people, come on, publisher, finish already, finish like the last little bits. Because my next book I've already, partially written, and it's sitting there in the back of my head like I want to get back to it. Why can't I work on that book? That's much more interesting, right? Because it's new than the book I've been working on for years. But yeah, it is helpful to have people. I don't know, writing is such a solitary journey. It's such a solitary vocation. Like you have to just spend so much time alone writing. And yet it is nice to find a way to be in community with other writers. It is challenging though, because you got to write. You can't. You got to write. So I'm not gonna, like, I don't do writing groups in person, like at cafes, because I feel like we'll start drinking coffee and eating snacks and talk, and I won't get any writing done. But if I'm on Zoom, I can just mute, and just get back to work. And yeah, that discipline, I think is so important. being able to, I think I learned that writing my dissertation, like you were talking about, Roger. When you're writing a dissertation, you don't have a choice. You have to get it done. You got people, you got committee members on your case, you have deadlines. And I was in this writing group when I was a grad student. And the one most valuable thing I learned in that writing group was they told us, you have to write every day. Even if it's 15 minutes, you got to write every day. And so that's what I tell myself. I have to write every day. And whatever amount of time I spend writing is going to be good. And if I can just have that discipline to sit down and write every day, the book gets done,
Yeah, I was it's actually quite amazing how when you sit down, even for like chunks of like, write for 20 minutes a day, suddenly it's like, wow, this week I wrote, maybe 10 pages. And before you know it, the book comes really quickly. I do want to give Marx and Adam an opportunity to answer that question around their writing process, though I want to also add something on here too, which is Jennifer Lisa said something to me that kind of struck me, which is when you said, right now is sort of I'm a writer. That's what I'm doing. I'm a writer, and there's something about claiming that as an identity that I think is also part of our process. Like I'm writing, and I'm writing because I am a writer now, right? Like when you're doing a dissertation or when you have a book deal, it's like I've got to get this done. I've got deadlines. So I'm just curious if Adam or Marx, if you have any questions about, or I'm sorry, any comments about what it was like for you in your process to claim the identity that I'm a writer, and then maybe even take that really vulnerable step and then share that with other people to say, I'm a writer.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I had a really powerful experience. Again, leaving Oklahoma, I was near 30, and I had been a piano major. I grew up playing. I came in singing. I'm a singer. I came in entertaining and singing. My aunties, always sang to me. And I remember being 3, singing to Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue, Into My Thumb, with my aunties just like riveted. And I'm a little bit scared of that song even then, but it was very entertaining. It was like, it made impact, and then played a lot of music, and then went to college as a piano major. And then I came out, and it didn't go well when I came out, and I ended up dropping out of being a piano major. And it was the AIDS crisis, and I went to nursing school and was working in the community. But I always kept playing guitar, and I would play other people's songs. And so I didn't see myself as a writer, but I saw myself as a musician. And then I would just play all these other incredible artist songs, that would make impact until I was 30, and then I left Oklahoma and I moved to Boulder, Colorado, into this Naropa universities there, in this very consciousness community and writers, and I found myself in a collective. And even then, I was still not quite ready to write. I was very shy about it, about writing my own stuff. But I did this. I read this book called The Artist's Way, and The Artist's Way talks about the voices in your head, the censorship, And I started writing letters to my censor and drawing my censor and, crossing out through it. And then I got my first tattoo was a guitar on my forearm. And I got this guitar on my forearm. It's grown a little bit. It's got some other stuff going on now. But this main part right here, I started with, and I did that because I wanted people to ask me. It was like my artist way. Like I wanted people to be, what is that? I was showing that I'm an artist because it was so important to me that I continue. And so the collectives have always been important, to be in collective of other writers singing, also with good boundaries though, because it's true you can get together and do other stuff. But then also, as I said earlier, that process of knowing that I can receive. It would be lovely if I just would receive everything and it would just be, it would just be done. But that's not true. It's more of a concept, or like, pieces. It's almost like getting little nudges of inspiration from the guides, ancestors, transcestors, kind of nudging me along. But also that feels like a community that I can, or like an entity or beings or whatever your worldview is you want to say about it. To me, it's my guides and my ancestors. And I've learned I have to ask them out loud to help me, and they do. And so, always in collective, and trying to, and in collectives that it's important to not, people who inspire, not so much like compete, or because I've gotten into a few, it's, circles where it's like, it can be very competitive. And I understand that we're very limited in our resources, as artists, which causes competition. But I always just kind of flow into who is here to uplift one another and inspire one another and share those little songs, those little snippets. You don't want to share too soon because then you get the critics going. But for the ones who be like, just holding space, right? Always finding that and cultivating that with one another, I think is vital.
Thank you.
I would also recommend The Artist's Way for any writers out there who feel like they can't call themselves writers yet. I definitely identify with that. I think it took until I had written something that I was proud of for me to come out as a writer. And part of that was, having to overcome the potential like shame and fear. And luckily I have experience like feeling shame and fear of like saying things about myself with my full chest. Being queer, being two-spirit, like that's made it easier to come out and feel confident as a writer, especially since, but it's, of course, still something that, the inner critic comes into play. And how my sort of like daily process, I try to get over that is really just trying to focus on the day, not trying to focus too far out, trying to be present, and trying to give myself as many mini goals as I can. I'm really lucky that my husband works from home, so I try to, and I failed, but I try to stick to his schedule and be like, okay, by the next break, I'm gonna have this scene done or this many words, and then that I don't have to worry too much about everything beyond that. That's what I just got to focus on.
I was thinking about, as you were sharing, sometimes we have those communities where we maybe go and sit and write, or virtual circles, or maybe even in our own homes, our partners or friends or family that we might live with, sort of keep us on track and on schedule in certain ways. So that idea of claiming our identities as writers, and what so many of us shared this evening, our identities as two-spirit people come into what we're writing about, whether we're sharing our own personal stories or it's inspired by our stories in some way. Our identities as two-spirit people shows up. And I think about, the importance of representation. Though I also think about sometimes as a writer, a pressure that I feel to get it absolutely perfect, correct, especially if it's about two-spirit people, because, this is my community and I want to make them proud, and I want to make sure that because I write both fiction and nonfiction, but if I'm writing nonfiction, I want to make sure that the history is as accurate as it possibly can be. So I just wanted to know if you all felt that pressure at all as a two-spirit writer, the way that I sometimes do, to make sure that, I think I see your faces, so I'm going to say, yeah, you probably do. And if someone would just jump in here and share a little bit about that pressure, or whatever you want to call it.
We had Casey do a presentation. So Casey and Wab both did a presentation about their writing and gave us some like good information about that. Casey really just reminded us like it's okay to just really close your door and write for yourself the first draft. Right? Because we were talking about like how it feels like there's people over our shoulders editing as we're writing. And I really felt that. And I was, revealing that. And she was like, no, just write for yourself first, write your truth. And then later, right, you'll want to add in like who are the people that that you're writing for, who's, the stranger that you're writing for, and then the stranger, so there's all these layers. Knowing that, right, what you're writing has an impact. And people, people that you thought might not pick up your book will read it and might be impacted by it, you know. But that first thing of just close the door and write for yourself first. And that was really important, I think, for me to hear, especially as a person attempting a new genre of writing, like of this novel writing. And then the other thing I've really been sitting with since last year as an overarching thing is I burnt out from one-on-one work last year as a practitioner, as a somatic practitioner. And I really, took a few months to just like heal from all of that. Just there was so much happening that led to that burnout. But a big question that emerged from there was like, who would I be if it wasn't for white supremacy? And all the ways, Roger, that you're talking about, like it produces so much trauma. Yeah. And there's so many generations, us included, healing from that. And as a part of that, what I got really roped into was me being curious about my own healing, which then led me into being a psychology major, and then that led me into being a counselor and all that stuff. But I was like, if it wasn't for white supremacy, right, I actually would have been an artist of some sort, just an artist in general, right? And then the other is like, without white supremacy, what sort of stories are we writing? Like I wouldn't be writing something that was, two characters who are having this, secret affair, and one of them is married, right? It's like they just would be queer, right? And we would just have stories about queer people, that's not complicated by religion, by, all the different things that gets complicated in this book, that complicates this character story. So I've really been sitting with that of like, what would the stories look like and who would I be had it not been for white supremacy? And then also just the anger that I have and rage around like all the stuff that we don't get to do because of that. And then also, coming back around, like that's actually our reality. Like we've all been impacted by white supremacy. So how do we do the work that we do in a way that at least my offering here is like, I want people to feel mirrored and feel like seen in their stories, and to also really have a story where like, someone doesn't die, right? Or someone doesn't get what they want, right? It's more just like you get to have like happiness and love and all the things, which a lot of us, we're in those spaces, right? We get those moments and those times. And why not write about that? Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about how if I read your book, I may have a very transformative experience based upon the story that you created in some particular way. And I'm wondering, because I was hearing Marx talk about this, and Adam talked a little bit about this when you were talking about being able to go see your grandfather with this after the stroke. Just how writing for ourselves is a transformative experience that, a lot of us, I know, speaking as a songwriter, right? It's like, if I need to get something out, give me 5 minutes and the guitar, and I'm going to work that shit out. Because it's kind of easy that way as a songwriter, or maybe as a poet, because we can sort of get out. But I'm just curious, if any of you want to chime in here about, Jennifer, Lisa.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to your question about what is it like to be a two-spirit writer. And I think for me, the challenge that we have as two-spirit artists and writers is a challenge that's similar to what we have as Native writers, as for me as a Black mixed blood writer, and that is, how do we write stories for our community? We write stories that celebrate our artistic sovereignty. Maybe like the book I just finished is on creating Native American philosophy that's intellectually sovereign. And I think that's the challenge that we have with all of this work, is how do we create work that's helpful and healing for our community? And how do we prevent ourselves from getting caught up in a defensive posture or responsive, reactive posture You know, when Miko invited me to perform at the Weaving Spirits, Two Spirit Festival, I was very fortunate to be given a platform to create a whole show. And that was one of the big questions I had in my mind when I was working on that one-person show was, how do I tell a two-spirit story that really honors all my ancestors and is actually for us and isn't like me educating the non-two spirits or the non-natives or, the non, and yet, of course, we live in this world where that's important too, that people need to understand who we are and know that we're here. I think that's a challenge that we have is, how do we tell these stories, these healing stories that are healing for the community. So that's what I think about when I think about really all of my work. How can what I write be healing for the communities that I come from?
And your current book that was just published recently, The Ethical Psychic.
The ethical.
Yes, that's. Could you share a little bit more about what that book is about, and if I were a reader, what might draw me to picking that up and giving it a read?
Okay, this is a book that I wrote for healers and psychics, and people who go see healers and psychics. And I wrote it in the context of working as a healer and a teacher of healing arts for many years, and coming at it from a particular background. So because I was trained by Indigenous teachers and non-Indigenous teachers, one of the things that I noticed was I was always taught about the importance of character as a healer. And, when you're doing this type of work, it's important that we are people of a certain character and that we follow, a certain way. And yet I found that whenever I was bringing that up, and I was bringing up it a lot when I was teaching, like psychic development, medical intuition, Akashic records, mediumship, all of the Reiki, all of these different courses I was teaching, I found that my students were telling me that no one else was teaching them this. And I think it's because my classes are very, very diverse. And a lot of the students are just going to classes from whatever teacher they can find. And they're not necessarily able to access, Indigenous teachers in a traditional setting today. And most of us don't have that access, right? And maybe you only have access to that occasionally, or a certain time in your life, you might have access to that, but you don't have it all the time if you're not, depending on, if you're an urban person. And so I wanted to write a book that was for people in all kinds of fields, but, psychics, healers, mediums, practitioners of any type of healing art, spiritual leaders. I have a whole section in here about fake gurus. I talk about just the responsibilities of somebody who has gifts and how we have to take those responsibilities seriously. And I wrote it originally for practitioners, but I have gotten feedback from readers saying that people are reading it who are not necessarily practitioners, but are people who are going to practitioners, and they want to know what the red flags are.
Yes. Yeah.
So someone just asked the title of it again, so I'll just put it up. The Ethical Psychic. So it gives you a lot of red flags in the book. Like, you should look for certain things if you're going to see somebody. They should be humble. They should be, they should, be making you feel better and not worse. There are just certain things you should look for when you go see someone. So, yeah, so it says, like, the little subtitle is, for psychics, hoodoos, witches, brujas, and healers. But it's even for more than that. It's for also just anyone who's involved in any kind of spiritual community who wants to know how to do things in a way that's helpful and not harmful.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your book, and I'm glad that it's out in the world. And one of the things that I really liked about when you said yes to the invitation to be here tonight is that I think that book also represents that as Indigenous two-spirit writers, we can write about all kinds of things. We are not limited to only talk about Indigenous issues or Two-Spirit issues, but we take those larger issues and someone just asked a question and they get influenced by our identity, right? So even if the Ethical Psychic isn't a Two-Spirit book per se, that's a Two-Spirit book, right? These are Two-Spirit stories. Go ahead.
It's written by a Two-Spirit.
Written by a Two-Spirit, right? When I actually when my publishing house, I think you and I have the same publisher. This is with North Atlantic. I think the
yeah. This book was with
publisher.
North Atlantic.
So they're really great. I love them. They're wonderful. And I came up with the title for Somacultural Liberation, and they came up with what do you even call it? The second title, whatever that's called.
Right, the subtitle. They did mine too.
Subtitle.
And there's like two of them.
What does your subtitle say?
So my subtitle is A Beginner's Guide to Healing with Integrity, Avoiding Unethical Encounters, and Using Your Gifts for Good. But they also have this other little thing down here about for psychics, hoodoos, witches.
Okay, so they came up with all that.
Came up with all of that. I just had the original title.
Yeah, mine was just Somacultural Liberation, and then they sent it back. They sent like the cover design to me with this, and the second part reads, An Indigenous Two-Spirit Somatic Guide to Integrating Cultural Experiences Toward Freedom. And I was like, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of words. And of course it's an Indigenous Two-Spirit guide because I wrote it, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about that. But to answer that question that's in our chat about how our identity changes our lens, to me, it's like, well, it is the lens. It's all I know. And the more that I've actually connected to what it means to me to identify as Two-Spirit, the more it's inspired and influenced my work. The more I'm willing to center. I think I've always centered the narrative around indigeneity in my writing, though similar to what you were saying, Marx, about like the tattoo. I don't have a tattoo like that, though I allow my identity to be known. And there's a certain vulnerability that I think is afforded if we take it to us as artists. We only have a few moments left before we start to wind things down. So if there are other questions for those that are watching us live on YouTube, please feel free to drop those in and we will get to them. But before we do kind of wrap everything up tonight and say our thank yous, I am curious, and Adam, I'd love for you to start. If you can share a little bit about ways in which people can get in touch with you or find more about your work, so any of your socials. I know that they've probably been dropped in the chat field as well, but though if you want to share those and any future projects you've got going on, either ones that are you're presently working on them or things that you hope to be working on very, very soon.
Right. Yeah, I love bouncing back and forth between screenplays and novels. And one of the things I love about that is procrastinating on one of them with the other. But probably the most exciting thing that I'm interested in doing going forward is more mentoring. So especially for those Two-Spirit writers out there who, especially, I write film, TV, novels. I can help as much as I can with those, connecting you to resources, giving feedback. Please feel free to reach out to me at wawparker.com and wawparker on Instagram as well. Feel free to reach out to me. And I'm more than happy to talk with you and see how I can help in any way that I can.
Maybe a future workshop at a gathering, a Two-Spirit gathering. Sometimes they have really great workshops, and that could be a really fun little workshop for folks around, starting their screenplay or their novel or whatever it might be, sort of to get things going. Anybody else? What else other than staying, as Miko has pointed out, Jennifer Lisa Vest, staying so youthful? Is that the title of your next book? How to stay so youthful?
Miko's funny.
Thank you. Now the rest of us sitting here thinking, like, did I not moisturize enough today, Miko? Like, what's going on here? Like, I thought I looked fine too. Thank you, Miko.
Miko's one to talk, right? Looking fabulous.
Miko Thomas, yeah. What you got going on, Jennifer Lisa? What's next for you?
Oh, so my book, Sovereign Wisdom, that's my Native American philosophy book, is coming out this month on Peter Lang. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on some courses on medical mediumship and medical mysticism on the Shift Network this year. I taught a class on Indigenous medical intuition last year that people really liked. And your story about the book title reminded me of that course where the Shift Network, they're really good at marketing. And I gave them what I wanted to teach. And then they came up with all this crazy marketing language. And I'm like, what is that what I'm doing? And just put me out there. And I was like, okay. So I'm working on that. And let's see, you can contact me on Instagram at Spirit Teacher. I'm on TikTok, The Ethical Psychic. And I have two websites. The one that's focused more on, healing and teaching healing is drbestmedicalintuitive.com. And then the website that shows you like all my publications and artwork and that kind of thing is drjenniferlisavest.com. I need to probably update that one.
As we all do, it's always like, oh no. And
so much work, right? All the keeping ourselves out there in the right way.
That's right. If there's a tip that I can give anybody, in this process, is like write everything down somewhere. So when you're putting your resume or your bio together, you can go, oh, that's right, I did do that thing. Because I am forgetting things that I did all the time. Like I can't remember. Oh, I don't remember I did that panel, or all those things. So that's some really good advice. Nazbah, how about you? What you got going on in the future?
Yeah, so I'm still working on this book. It's just in its second draft, so I want to get it done maybe by the middle of the year, and then have some people do some developmental edits on it, and sort of give me some feedback, and I can work on those edits toward the end of the year. Yeah, and then get it edited enough that maybe I can submit it to someone to see if they'll accept it. But that takes a lot of time to do. So I probably need to hire a couple of folks just to get some edits going for that. But beyond that, I also was just curious about like maybe just doing a short story, a book of short stories. There's just so many like little bits of stories that I hear from my family, and I really just want to document them. Like there's a cute one about my grandpa who waited for my grandma for her to finish high school so that they could basically elope. He stole her because he was betrothed to someone else and he didn't want to marry the other lady. So he hid in the mountains. And then when my grandma graduated high school, he came down, took her, and they settled where they settled and had 11 kids. Yeah, so I want to write that story like that. I think that's such a beautiful story, and just to do the research on that would be so beautiful. And there's just some other really just funny stories of and also all the like hard stories on the res, so just a mixture of them I think would just be so beautiful. Yeah, and then you can get a hold of me at my website. It's just nazbahtom.com. Or if you want to, be my buddy on Instagram, I'm at Dandy Indian, NDN. Yeah, it's also another way to just sort of track what I'm doing. Yeah.
So dandy, that one. Thank you, Nazbah.
Not tonight. It just got me sweater.
Well, actually, before I got on camera tonight, I was like, okay, should I look all glam and like fancy, or should I look what I look like when I'm writing? And I was like, I'm gonna go like in between. It'll be like a mix. I'm not my formal like super glossy self like I normally am on these things tonight. So I have like, I did have glasses with me earlier, but they were reflecting off the light, so I took them off. And then I was like, you know what? Just show up, Roger. You'll be fine. You can wear whatever you want to wear. Marx, what about you? What do you got going on? What's next for you?
Yeah, well, it's a continuation, like this, that you saw the music video in one song. It's a whole album called 2S Sacred, and talking about, two-spirit sacred, and talking about, okay, being two-spirit and writing. This was the first time I had the challenge of the theme of writing an album themed in the decolonization of sexuality and gender and two-spirit experience. And also I went back to school, and after living in the music world for a long time, I went back to school in my 40s and became a therapist because I went to so much therapy. I became a therapist as well. But now it's like this incredible opportunity to talk about the inspiration for this album and each of the songs and where they come from. And so like I just gave the opening speech at Creating Change, the National LGBT Task Force. Amazing. And they were like, "Can you speak and sing?" And I'm like, "I think I can." And so I'm learning how to do that, like just to continue the inspiration. And so I'll be traveling around. We have an amazing event. There's a few amazing events. One is going to be Mistress Red in Oklahoma City for IndigePop. There's a special evening on Reservation Dogs Day where we do. Pishan Red is going to screen Mistress Red, and I'll sing some torch songs. And Yay. It's at the Fortson Hotel in Oklahoma City. So it's like fun events like that too, where I get to go sing. I'll be, of course, at BAAITS Powwow this weekend, and Sunday we'll do the Two Spirits Rock Brunch. But yeah, I think it's just continuing to kind of see how this unfolds, to continue to speak and inspire as much as I can. Again, I'll just say this also, none of us represent all, I'll say this to myself, because I don't represent all Two-Spirit people. I don't represent all IndigeQueer. I don't represent all Osages. It's very important to me to say that, because sometimes I think people are like, some of the most challenging that I am writing about and singing to myself about is lateral violence within our own community, and how some people can get really envious or jealous or snarky about who are you to be doing this, and who are you in your identity to be doing this versus my identity to do this. And I think it's really important that we be able to talk about like white passing privilege and, our different identities of privilege that we all have, or don't have or do have, and to open doors for others, but to also stay in a positive regard for one another and care for one another, and principled, discourse, like that we have, ways of being trauma informed as we navigate limited resources in the art world, and limited resources in the native art world, and limited artists, resources in the native queer art world. If anybody's non-native and you want to know how to support, find a native nonprofit and give money, especially to grant artists. If you're moved by any of this tonight, do that, because, or help other artists, like create spaces for younger artists. I'm always like, if you think you can do it better than me, right on. How can I help you? So I think that's all very important. So, but I am writing some, coming out of the Two-Spirit theme, and more into like, how to love one another through challenge and difficulty and oppression and lateral violence when we face that. So I'm hoping to, sing about that, and being, this thing of being trauma informed. I also, like Nazbah, earlier you said that you had influence from your wife. That wife influence, right? My wife encouraged me to sing the words, "Hate speech echoing, eclipse my light," right? I never thought I could sing that song, but it's to sing about those, to bring those words into our art, like to bring artistry and in a trauma-informed, kind of like all of our lived experience and our healing paths, is really inspiring to me. So something like that is coming down the line. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, as I mentioned to you all, I just had a book come out today, so I will be going on a little bit of a book talk tour over the spring and the summer. So check that out. I've got a lot more music gigs coming up over the next year as well, and I'm working on a brand new album which should be out just in time for Pride this year. I'm almost done with that. I'll be going up to Toronto in about a month and a half or so to finish that recording. There were several other questions that came in, in terms of like what inspired us to write. If people could, someone was asking us about like if we could explain like what it means to be Two-Spirit, and these are questions I would love to get into if we had another hour. Though I would say that, check us out on our socials, follow our work, check our work out, because I know I talk a lot about it in my book about Two-Spirit and what it means for me to be Two-Spirit, etc. Marx's brilliant album, Too Sacred, talks a lot about this as well. Adam's film, of course, The Roof, So a lot of us are answering these questions a bit in the work that we're doing. I want to thank each and every one of you, first and foremost, for being a friend. I'm always just thankful and fortunate that I can call such incredibly gifted, talented, and although we didn't really get into it tonight, incredibly funny and amusing. I've laughed a lot with all of you. So I know tonight we were a little bit serious in our little writer way, but know that we are also pretty damn native and humorous when cameras are not pointed in our faces as well. So I want to thank all of you for really just sharing your gift, your creativity, and your brilliance with the BAITS community tonight. And thank you for your continued work and your craft of writing. And I really appreciated what Marx was saying and what Adam was saying about mentoring, especially those that are coming after us, and about the importance of the youth voice. As I was sort of looking third person at our panel tonight, I was thinking, gosh, I didn't have a youth on here. I really should have invited a youth here. I mean, other than Adam. Sorry, Adam. I see you looking like, what about me? You're right. You're right. Other than Adam, I didn't invite any youth here tonight. Just a bunch of elders, or as I like to call myself, a yelder. Not quite an elder, not quite a youth. I'm kind of, yelder. I'm more on the elder spectrum, but I like yelder better. Anywho, y'all are brilliant. Y'all are really, really great. I also want to thank the entire BAITS Powwow committee. You all have done an amazing, amazing job thus far. I cannot wait for the rest of the events this week. I'm so excited for Saturday, super excited for Sunday.
And we'll have a youth with us on Sunday at Two Spirit Rocks.
There will be a Two Spirit Rock Star youth with us on Sunday. Meta Morgan, who I'm so excited to rock out with. Share this video. It'll be recorded, so you can share this with your friends. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to our tech who are with us here tonight. Thank you so much, Gwen and crew, for being here. And I'm going to have Marx play us out, or actually the Marx song is going to play us out. So I'm going to pass this back over to you, Gwen, and you can do our formal say goodbye notice. But if those of us that are still here, panelists, if you want to say thank you, unmute yourself. Thank you. Thank the audience for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.